tous plus là. Hein. On entend très bien.
Dear friends of the Apsaco community, it's great to see you. For the second year in a row, we will be fully online, but yet it's great to have this possible. Thanks to you. So my heartful thanks and of all the team for those who will be participating with us. Let me say a couple of words on how the idea of a specific conference on peace and security in Africa emerged 5 years ago, as we are now in our 5th edition. I think the discussion with Professor Houdaigui will be speaking right after me now. We had a discussion on Africa should think peace and security issues for itself. We need to create a sort of intellectual infrastructure, intellectual framework where all colleagues and practitioners interested in this topic could meet and exchange and discuss with a form of regularity and regular contributions, creating a space, a platform where we can exchange ideas on a very complex issue, which is that is at the nexus of many issues, questions, challenges ranging. I would like to congratulate my colleague, Senior Fellow and Professor Houdaigui for the energy he has put in this project, and remind you that every year after a couple of weeks after we finish the conference, we publish proceedings of this conference. It is also part of a broad research program of the Policy Center. We have about 7 research programs, and peace and security is part of one of our sub-programs. So it is something we do work on all year long. We also have tried to also prepare the next generation. So we have several young researchers as well working on peace and security issues that are with us here at the Policy Center. And I think it is also important that we prepare for the next generation to be able to think the future of Africa in this on these issues, which should be taught for Africans by Africans. Of course, in the spirit of what we do at the Policy Center, which is dialogue, open, tolerant dialogue, respectful dialogue, fact-based, evidence-based dialogue with the African the partners of Africa all around the world. So this is a little bit, I wanted to remind you of the spirit of this conference after now at its 5th edition, and inshallah next year we will see each other physically, but there's also other type of activities we could come up together in the meantime before we don't have to wait for next year to take initiative. So I think we are colleagues, myself, but also Rachid and the rest of the team are always very open to venture in new projects, new adventures with you on these issues. This year I will briefly just mention the team, but Rachid will elaborate more. So we've decided to focus on women and peace and security. I think is an important topic, and we made sure that our panels and the overall participants is a very balanced, almost perfectly balanced and mix of women and men. So that's something also we will try to adopt as a rule at the Policy Center. So let me again thank you all for being with us, for taking the time to contribute to Apsaco. We are very proud to have you in our community, and in particular our friend that will be in the next panel, but the other contributors as well. And you can count on the commitment of the Policy Center to continue to work on those issues, as I said, beyond Apsaco. So let me wish you a great conference, and which I'll be following very closely as well. So let me now turn to Professor Rachid Al-Houdaigui, who is our senior fellow and has taken the lead on this conference. Thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. President, for giving me the floor. Ladies and gentlemen, Excellency, good afternoon. At the beginning, I would like to say thank you very much indeed for all the attendees for their kind presence in the 4th African Peace and Security Annual Conference that is taking place, as you know, at the Policy Center for the New South. I'm delighted to note the great diversity of the speakers, about 35 speakers from more than 15 nationalities. And we are very proud to have ensured gender balanced participation at this edition. We have about 20 women and 18 men. Concerning the objectives of the edition, it aims to provide an opportunity to exchange knowledge and experiences with representatives of international and regional organizations, expert politicians, and civil society actors in order to assess the general performance in the implementation of the agenda during the last 20 years. This conference also gives us the opportunity to debate effective and innovative actions to enhance the performance of countries to accomplish a relevant implementation of women as main actors in the public policy security and in the peace building process. I would like to draw your attention to the principal points and the main reasons as opening remarks of our presence, and which are based. Sorry.
Go ahead. Sorry, Rachid.
Okay. Well, so I have to share with you the principal points and the main reasons we, as opening remarks of our conference, and which are based, as I said, on greatly important topics. As a starting point, this conference has been dedicated to strengthening the role of women in peace building and making the international community fully aware about the major participation of women in all stages, locally, nationally, and globally. Moreover, there will be a lot of talks about the 4 different panels, as well as three workshops. Bolstering women's role in conflicts prevention and resolution as the first panel, which will look into the various stages that women are in charge of, shedding the light on a variety of areas that ought to be bolstered. The second panel is integrating and enhancing the gender dimension in security and defense structures. This will brighten women's roles taking part in harsh positions. The third panel will not only interpret the major different roles or place of women in violent extremism, but it will also represent an opportunity for debating the current women's situation in violent environment, which is prevalent in different African regions. The last panel will be about boosting women presence and participation in peacekeeping tasks. Moreover, this panel aims to discover service women and describe them not only as blue-collar workers, but as white-collar ones who contribute and lead peace operations. One more thing before the summarize is what we have. We have 3 more extended workshops are as follows. The Global Peace Index, which is edited by and published by IEP. And another workshop is ISIS report that cares about Iraq and Syria issues. And the last one is the annual reports of Africa's geopoliticals, which is published by the Policy Center for the New South. So, Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, special thanks for your priceless attention, and I really hope you good, fruitful, and meaningful performance to debating all the viewpoints along these 3 days of our conference. Thank you once again. Yes. I now think we have to move to the first panel, which is introductory conversation. Yes. We also the introductory conversation with Mrs. Mabingue Ngom as a chair, and Miss Bineta Diop and Letty Chiwara.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. So welcome to this 5th edition of the African Peace and Security Annual Conference. I'm very pleased to be part of this introductory conversation, and this is a great opportunity for me to speak directly with eminent personalities on the issue of women, peace, and security. Allow me to express my special thanks to Dr. Karim Aynaoui, the Executive President of the Policy Center for the New South, and Rachid Houdaigui, Senior Fellow at the Policy Center for the New South, but also those who made great sacrifices, worked the extra hours, and went the extra mile to help us get where we are today. I would like also to thank and congratulate our two speakers for this introductory conversation. I want to name Madam Bineta Diop, Special Envoy on Women, Peace and Security at the African Union Commission, and Letty Chiwara, UN Women Representative to Ethiopia, the African Union, and the Economic Commission for Africa at UN Women, of course. Their leadership and expertise on the issue of women, peace, and security have been instrumental to ongoing successes of the agenda during the last few years. Ladies and gentlemen, effective participation of women in peacekeeping and conflict prevention effort is a key priority for the United Nations organization. This is why the Women, Peace and Security Agenda was adopted by the United Nations Security Council with the resolution 1325. This resolution reiterates and highlights the contribution of women to conflict prevention, peacekeeping, and conflict resolution. The Security Council urged actors, all of them, to involve women in all UN peace and security effort and call on parties to conflict to take special measures to do so. However, despite the many global and regional initiatives and commitments that have been made since then, women's contribution to formal peacemaking processes remains suboptimal, and many peace agreements lack gender provisions that adequately address women's security and peace-building needs. We all know that peace is a prerequisite for health, equality, and human security. So this 5th edition of the African Peace and Security Annual Conference is taking place in a world where 2 billion people live in conflict affected by conflict. In these countries, women are working against tremendous odds to build and sustain peace. They do so even in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemics, but continue to be sidelined. This conference is also taking place at a moment when many African countries are fragilized by a worsening security situation, which is compromising their development. This is why we at UNFPA support the call for action emanating from the United Nations leadership. Since January 2020, the Regional Office for West and Central Africa is implementing a regional initiative to deepen reflection on the relationship between demographic change and the occurrence of armed conflict in the Sahel. The project is aimed at analyzing in greater depth the types of relationship at play, direct or indirect, between demographic change and the occurrence of armed conflict, and the main factor playing in this relationship. The result of this empirical study provide evidence of a comprehensive program on population, peace, and security that will help address the current fragility of the Sahel holistically by focusing on the structural cause of extremism instead of the military solution that is currently used and has shown its own limitation. So our objective is to engage in a political dialogue based on data and evidence with governments and partners. Ladies and gentlemen, this 5th edition of the African Peace and Security Annual Conference is a great opportunity to build on the effort made so far and to reflect deeply on women participation to peace and conflict prevention. Let us be energized by the progress we have made since the adoption of the resolution 1325, and let's continue to push onward the women, peace and security agenda until we reach our final goal, which is to offer a secure, integrated, prosperous and peaceful Africa led and managed by its own citizens. We are clearly on the right path, but there is still work to be done to get to our objective of a prosperous and peaceful Africa. I would like to close my remarks with the hope that you will enjoy this introductory conversation and the next session. And I wish you a fruitful exchanges. I now leave the floor to our two speakers, starting with Bineta Diop, Special Envoy on Women, Peace and Security at the African Union Commission. Thank you very much for your participation. Bineta, you have the floor now. Over.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mabingue Ngom, our esteemed moderator, for giving me the floor and for the introduction. Let me also recognize the previous speaker, Mr. Karim Aynaoui, the Executive President of the Policy Center for the New South, but also Mr. Rachid, who is also leading this project in the policies at the Policy Center. And my sister, Letty, good to see you. So glad the UN Women Representative to Ethiopia and African Union and ECA, my dear sister. Let me also say that all distinguished participants and attending this panel. On my behalf and of behalf of the Musa Faki Mohammed, the chairperson of the African Union, I really congratulate the leadership of the center for convening this 5th edition of the African Peace and Security Annual Conference, and the fact that it has been dedicated to WPS in Africa. The conference, as you said, Mabingue, is timely and important in raising the visibility and commitment to the WPS agenda in Africa, especially in this challenging time when the world continues to grapple with the COVID-19 pandemic. This pandemic has caused, as you know, so much disruption in many of our undertaking, but we are here today, and I think that we are, going around those challenges. Since the adoption of 1325 in 2000, many African countries, and not just at the continental level, but at the regional body, have adopted plans to achieve the goal. And you reminded us, Mabingue, on the goals. And we can say that Africa have embraced really from the Security Council down to the continent. As we know that when we look at it last year, 2020, when we were evaluating, we realized that 30 African countries have adopted national action plan. 30 is more than half of the continent. They adopted the national action plan. I think it has made the continent, the continent is leading in the global world with 54.5% of national action plan. And when I look at the regional level, like in ECOWAS, in the 6 regional economic community or regional mechanisms. Many have also adopted regional action plan. I can name them: IGAD, ECOWAS, ECAS, ICJLR, even the sub-region like the Manu River and the SADC. I think we can say that we don't lack on issues of policy. We have them all. We have national action plan. They are actually there, and we are encouraging. My office is helping member states and with the UN Women to make sure that we have more action plan and policies. But what is lacking is the implementation. We need to say implementation and implementation. In 2018, that's why my office was spearheading implementation and action. In 2018, the African Union Peace and Security Council adopted the Continental Result Framework, saying we need to down it to put some indicators and to see how to galvanize the member states and the RECs in delivering to the commitment that they have made to the women of Africa. So I can say that Africa have made some progress. You have said it, even, when it comes to the law, adoption of laws, policy, strategy on WPS. But still, African women are still far from reaping the benefit of the resolution. We still have a long way to go. Let me give you a few examples. The women participation in peace process remain low despite the persistent call by women to have their voice heard. You can see some cases in Libya. We have been following the case to say we need to be at the table wherever negotiation is going on. We are supporting the women of Mali in their transformation to make sure that they are part and parcel of the transformation of their country. The Central African Republic as well. And this have been well known. The women are knocking the door and saying we need to be there because our agenda should be included. Because the agenda of the women matters. How it matters, maybe we will discuss it in our discussion, but we know what women bring at the table. It's so important that we include them. Otherwise, it will be not lasting that agreement that have we seen in many countries. The second aspect I wanted to highlight is the incidences of gender-based violence that have increased, especially during the period of COVID-19 pandemic, to the extent that I'm sure that Letty will agree with me that we call it all the shadow pandemic. And UN Women have been leading to say, hey, it's not just happening in conflict zone, like in the refugee camps and others, but it happened everywhere, even at the homes. So we need to address that. And maybe my last example is just political participation and leadership. Because when we say that, women leadership matter, but when we look at the progress made, when I look at what the Interparliamentary Union said, women representation in parliament average at 23.8%, with only 23 of African ministers being women. This falls short of the recommended 30% of the Beijing female representation in all decision-making structure, or even the 50-50 of the African Union. So we have, again, a long way to go. And we know that in order to prevent, in order to make sure that women participate in political mechanism, for example, we need to have women in decision-making all over in the decision spheres. So we have challenges. There are several challenges in the implementation. When we review those that have adopted their national action plan. And again, let me highlight few of these. We need to look at the patriarchal attitude that still exists in the continent, but the system that exists, the high discrimination level in peace and security institutions. I name one of it is the mediation. It's a male-dominated, because those who take the gun, they said they are the men, they should be at the table. They don't look at the agenda, the transformative agenda that women can bring. It's still the men that hold the guns, and our apparatus that are leading also most of them are the military. So how do we transform those mechanisms to be human security, to make sure that the voice of and the face of the people, the citizen of Africa are there? And also there is an inadequate accountability mechanism and limited allocation of resources as well. I'm sure that in the debate, those will come at the front. So to address some of the challenges, because we need solutions, what my office have done in the African Union, we have put in place the monitoring and reporting mechanism based on the CRF, the Continental Result Framework, which culminate into an annual report of the chairperson of the African Union on the status of the implementation to enhance member state accountability and accelerate delivery on WPS in Africa. We have also initiated the convening, to bring all the ecosystem, convening of the annual Women, Peace and Security Forum to federate the action of key actors. So that's the ecosystem we wanted to see at the policy level of those who are the front line that are able to accelerate the delivery of the commitment. So, for example, in looking at action for silencing the gun for a sustainable peace in Africa, that forum that was supported by UN Women and all the agency will continue on the annual basis to federate our action. AUC has also scaled up action to promote participation. I named just FemWise. I think this is a network that is there. My sister Letty and we have been at the front to make sure that we create the network that allow us to, bring the voice of the women at the table. Another mechanism is AULIN, Africa Women Leaders a network that we do solidarity mission, led by Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, but also my sister Amina Mohammed, DSG, Pumzile, all of us. We did recently Mali and Mozambique, the Cabo Delgado, just to hear the women, our sisters that are on the ground that need to be supported. And lastly, just to look at the young women leadership. Mabingue, you talk about them. You may recall that in 2017 and until now, it was the year of harnessing the democratic dividend through investment in youth. And I think we need to continue with the strong support of UNFPA to harness that dividend and make sure that we prevent the unseen conflict that we see in political spheres, but also in our election. So as I conclude my remark, I commend this conference, the Policy Center, and their role as a think tank to continue offering solid research and knowledge base to enhance policy and support member states, our African member states, to adopt strategy for delivery on the WPS agenda. I wanted to maybe highlight the Generation Equality Compact, because what is new in that is the humanitarian action framework. And I'm sure that my sister Letty will talk about it, but I am open for discussion and dialogue on how do we implement better the WPS in Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bineta, for these comprehensive remarks. Let me now give the floor to my colleague Letty, and hope she will build on some of the issue Bineta have raised, so that we can have a few minutes conversation before we end this session in about 20 minutes. So, Letty, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, my brother Mabingue Ngom. Let me also observe protocol and recognize Karim El-Ayoun, from the Executive President of the Policy Center for the New South, and indeed Rachid El-Houdaigui, the Senior Fellow at the Policy Center for the New South. And of course, I am honored as always to be on the same panel with my dear sister, Bineta Diop. It's always hard to follow your footsteps because you take all the words from me and I don't know what to say anymore. You've said it all, Bineta, because you are the expert on women, peace and security in Africa. But allow me to once again also follow Madam Bineta and congratulate the Policy Center for recognizing women, peace and security as a key theme for this dialogue this year, for their 5th edition of this annual conference. As Mabingue said, and also as Bineta said, it's so timely for our continent, as we do have a lot of issues and conflicts around the countries in Africa, and where we need to begin to see some results of a lot of the work that Bineta referred to around women, peace and security that we have been doing. But allow me to start by complementing what Bineta said by emphasizing the fact that the WPS agenda is actually rooted in Africa. We all know it's rooted in Africa because African gender activists, practitioners, policymakers played a central role in the formulation and adoption of the UN Security Council Resolution 1325 in 2000. You recall, Namibia was chairing the Security Council that year. And years to come, and at the same time, South Africa was a co-sponsor of the subsequent UN Security Council 1820 resolution. So indeed, the whole women, peace and security agenda globally has been driven by African women. And therefore, African women are the ones that can show how this agenda can actually bear dividend to the continent and of course, to peace and security on the continent. Of course, Bineta has already mentioned some of the challenges and gaps we continue to have. And one of them, of course, was while we celebrate that more than 30 countries have actually come up with national action plans on 1325, we all know that these plans are not costed nor included in national budgets. A huge challenge we have. That's why implementation is going at a very slow pace. So we need to see much more action on that. I also want to supplement what Bineta said around the need for us to look at the role of women's leadership generally in politics and decision-making. And we know that Africa does celebrate Rwanda as the only country that has reached parity, more than 50% of women in parliament. And of course, we do have other countries like Senegal, Cape Verde, that have gone beyond 40%. And we celebrate all those milestones. But we are also seeing regressions in some of the countries. We are seeing regressions in countries that had actually done very well. And we're seeing numbers going down. And we need to do more to see women at the decision-making table. And that's something that I just wanted to also add on to what Bineta has mentioned. But allow me to just share some of the innovative work that UN Women has been doing over the years in driving the women, peace and security agenda forward. Number one, what we do best is knowledge and data generation. We do this in various ways, but I want to share a recent study we did on the dividends of women in mediation, which is a study we did from looking at 7 African countries. This study has actually helped us to document the role of women in peace processes in different tracks of mediation. It is also, however, noted that women's participation in peace processes and representation is a very small fraction of total participation, particularly when we look at track 1 mediation. So I would want to recommend that the Policy Center looks at that study and makes it one of their reference documents, because it will inform action moving forward on how do we address some of the challenges we have. The second area of work, which of course Bineta mentioned and we are working very closely with, is supporting the development and implementation of national action plans. And I won't deliver on that because Bineta mentioned and talked a lot about that. But very critically also is the issue of women's role in mediation and conflict prevention. And I want to also build on the example that Bineta shared, which is the Central African Republic, and of course other countries like Sierra Leone, Burundi, South Sudan, and Mali, where we have worked on this issue. What we have done in these countries is that we have ensured that women are lead in significant numbers in terms of being at the table, but also ensuring that gender perspectives are in all aspects of the negotiation of final peace agreements. We have also ensured that we hold regional trainings of women mediators in West Africa and also in the Horn of Africa. And we have also, in that same regard, deployed gender advisors to the offices of special envoys in the Sahel, in the Great Lakes, and in Burundi. This is very critical because that's the only way you can ensure that any peace negotiation in Africa takes into account the needs and priorities of women and ensures that that peace agreement will deliver for the whole of society. I'll probably share one other last example. I have many, but I'll share one more. It's the issue of establishment of transitional justice mechanisms, very key. Because during conflicts, as we all know, there are lots of violations of human rights and particularly of women's human rights. Bineta did talk about sexual and gender-based violence, and we all know about rape as a weapon of war, and it's documented. It's no longer. It's now public that rape has been used in many countries across Africa as a weapon of war. So one of the things that we've been doing in Africa, and I'll share an example of what we've been doing in Central African Republic recently, is that we supported the establishment of the Transitional Justice Mechanism and the Truth, Justice and Reparation Commission, which was done, of course, as part of the 2019 Peace Accord. We also supported orientation towards effective access to justice mechanism by victims and ensure that over 90% of women received gender responsive justice delivery throughout the process of the Reparation Commission. Of course, we note with much disappointment that SGBV remains the most widespread human rights violation in the Central Africa conflict. And despite all our efforts and despite this Peace Accord of 2019, it is estimated that at least a large number of GBV cases continue to happen every hour in the country, 30% of them being women being raped in the country. So while we are doing all this work, we notice that there is much more to be done. And Bineta did mention some opportunities which we are looking at going forward. One such opportunity is the Generation Equality Forum. The Generation Equality Forum is a global gathering for gender equality, which is convened by UN Women and by the governments of Mexico and France in partnership with youth and civil society organizations. The forum kicked off in Mexico City in March and will culminate in Paris from 30 June to 2 July. Around the Generation Equality Forum, we have 6 action coalitions which will be launched to advance gender equality and women's rights in key thematic areas. And indeed, the Women, Peace and Security and Humanitarian Action Compact will be one of those. And I think Bineta already mentioned, we are looking forward to many of us on this conference joining that compact so that together we can put all our knowledge, all our experience, all our resources, and put our words to action. And Binta mentioned, this is time for action. We have all the policy frameworks. We have all the commitments. We have the will, but what we are lacking is action. And I think the compact will help us to move policy to action. Finally, as I conclude, let me just share with you a few recommendations for call to action. As I said, we are in the mode of action, and I'll make them brief, and of course, open for any conversation and questions after this. Number one, let us eliminate the root causes of conflict, such as poverty, because poverty exposes millions of women and girls to vulnerabilities and violations that continue unabated, particularly in conflict situations. Number two, let us ensure the adoption and implementation of sufficiently funded, and I underscore sufficiently funded, national action plans on 1325. This is so important because we need to ensure accountability to implement this resolution and, of course, subsequent resolution. This is a very critical step and a sign of commitment to bridge global commitment and national level action, national and local level action. So this is very key. Number three, let us identify and implement strategies to increase women's participation in humanitarian action, recovery, and resilience processes. I shared already some of the examples of what we are doing. Number four, we are calling on member states to increase women's representation in mediation processes and preventive diplomacy. And you can tap, there's no longer an excuse to say, where are the women? Working with Binta, working with the Africa Union Commission, working with all our partners, UN Women, AU, and all our partners have worked on FemWise, which is a network that brings together women expertise from across Africa. We have worked on Africa Women Leaders Network, AULIN, which again is a collective of lots of expertise of women. And we have these women who can make a difference. So there is a pool of expertise that member states can draw upon. And then finally, I would like to call up on all of us to address the patriarchal and cultural social norms that sideline women and girls from accessing education and participating in decision making. And I think this is very key because education is a key tool to making a difference, to policy and to demanding one's rights. So we really call upon all of us to invest on education to dismantle patriarchal and social norms that are evident in our societies. I could go on, but I want to just thank you all, and thank you, Mabingue, and thank you, Madam Binta, for being part of this conversation. I feel honored. Thank you very much, and I wish us all constructive conversations going forward. Over to you, Mabingue. Mabingue, you are muted. You are muted, Mabingue.
No, thank you very much, my dear sister. And I think it was good to let you speak, longer than planned, to give us, we male, I think, a lesson of what it means to be the one speaking always and not listening to our sisters. So thank you very much. Now, unfortunately, we have very few minutes for a few questions, and then perhaps 1 or 2 minutes for me to wrap up, because we have to close in 8 minutes. So the floor is open for who would like to speak, unless you want to post your question on the chat. So the floor is open. Show your hand and you will have a chance to speak for 30 to 45 seconds. Please. Anyone who would like to speak? If not, given the time constraints, perhaps I can make a few closing remarks if you allow me. If I see no hand, I will just proceed and try to capture the gist of the conversation, given the excellent work done by our two speakers, but also the colleague who set the scene at the beginning. From my perspective, I think the colleague have highlighted a few very important gaps, and I think I want to pick 4 of them. I think the first one is gap in implementation of action on the ground, very often driven by the lack of costed action plan. I think that's one gap. You know, the second gap is really what I can call the implementation gap, because implementation is key, and unless we move to action, the commitment will not be effective, especially if you look at the current situation in the most protracted crisis. You know, when you have high political commitment, but yet these political commitment are not backed with the necessary resources that will help us move the agenda on the ground. So there is a kind of a gap between the commitment very often expressed very high at a high level, and the action related to funding this plan, costed plan, where they exist. And our colleagues have said very clearly that very often we don't have costed plan. So that's lead me to a third gap that is really the political commitment that also drive what I would call the political participation gap. And I think Bineta did highlight the 23% compared to the benchmark set by Beijing 25 years ago, and by the African Union of 50%. So we have a long way to go if we have to show stronger progress. And I think the fourth gap is really what I could call the accountability gap. And I think unless we have the metrics, unless we have the data and the evidence to show what is moving and what is not moving, it will be difficult for us to achieve the progress we want to see, be it on social norm, be it on funding, be it on development and funding of action plan. I think a robust metric, you know, and a system of accountability will help us move forward. I think the colleague have also mentioned effort to address the root causes. It will be really the fifth gap, and I have posted on the chat box the outcome of the work we have done in UNFPA to run an empirical effort to try to see what are the drivers and how we can start addressing some of the driver of fragility so that we can make further progress. And I think it was interesting to find out that unless we address issues related to gender-based violence, especially child marriage, and related issue with regard to access to family planning and other right issue, it will not be possible for us to address the fragility we have in the Sahel and the rest of the continent, be it the Lac Chad Basin or the Great Lake or the Mano River Union. Colleagues, it's just an attempt to give a few closing remarks, but I want to thank again the two speakers for the excellent work they have done, but also the Policy Center for putting this very, very issue at the center of this year conference. I think it's important, and I think it's about time for us now to get ready for the Generation Equality Forum in Paris. That should be different from what we have done from now. And I hope it will build on the data, on the evidence, on what have worked, what have not worked. And I hope it will give us a chance to come with some new way of accelerating progress, because we are now 9 years from the 2030. And I think we should not wait until the last 1,000 days, like what we did in the era of the Millennium Development Goals, where we waited until the 1,000 last day to start moving fast. So my end word is really to thank you all for joining. I think it was an excellent conversation, and I'm sure it can be a very, very instrumental input to the upcoming Generation Equality Forum. I'm very sorry for the time, and I think it's time for now to close the meeting. And thank you very much, and over to you, organizer. Thank you very much. Thank you.